the Alfred Z. Solomon Charitable Trust Program Series. And it's a monthly lecture series that we do here at the museum. And they're all about Saratoga Springs history or other topics that are important to the history of the city of Saratoga Springs. So tonight we've got a special program. I'm fortunate to have a number of my colleagues in the history field from the area that are more than excited to come in here to help do this program, because without their help we couldn't have done this. We did a program like this when I first came to the museum, and that was 19 years ago. And at that time we didn't use PowerPoint. I think we had a slide projector. So things have changed in 20 years. But we did this because, you know, I'll get calls here at the museum, and people will say, well, what do you do at the History Museum? Or where can I donate this? Or they'll confuse us with Sam at Preservation Foundation. Or I went to the Saratoga Room, isn't that the only place to research? So we thought that by trying to bring this to the community, you can have a better idea of what we have and what each of our organizations have. And if you have something that you want to donate or that you think should be preserved, we can tell you which organization is the one that it should properly go to. And so tonight, it's going to be, each one of us are going to come up and speak for about 5 to 10 minutes on our organizations. We have a few PowerPoints we're going to go through. And there's a couple times we're actually going to have to switch out flash drives, but it should go pretty smoothly because we never have tech problems when we do our programs. So, so representing all the organizations tonight, I'm from the History Museum, which is here in this building. Lori Wies is director of the Saratoga Room, which are the local history librarian at the Saratoga Room in the public library. Nancy Wagner, you're with the Department of Accounts in City Hall. We have Mary Ann Fitzgerald, who is our city historian. We have Samantha Bosshart, who is executive director of Saratoga Springs Preservation Foundation. Ann Clothier, who is the educator at Brookside Museum. Lorraine Roberts, who is our county historian. And that's it. Okay. You're out, women. All right. And so with that, I am going to invite Lori up to the podium, and she's going to begin the program.
Okay, thanks, Jamie. Wait a minute, I got to turn my little goober on here. Okay. Yes, I'm Lori Wies, and I'm the local history librarian at Saratoga Springs Public Library in the Saratoga Room. For those of you who aren't familiar with the Saratoga Room, we are on the second floor. The collection of the Saratoga Room actually started back in the 1970s, and it was right up here on the corner where the Art Center now is when the library was there. When the library moved to our new building, which was in the 1995, the Saratoga Room was designed specifically for the collection, and it has grown and grown and grown since then. Primarily in terms of what our collection has, it's mostly paper-based, if you think along those lines. However, we also collect photographs, we collect DVDs, VHS, believe it or not, I got one the other day. Pretty much anything that is not an object. We just don't have room for that. We have an extensive subject file. We have over 50 file drawers chock full of anything and everything you ever wanted to know about anything that had to do with Saratoga. We've also got a manuscript collection. I'm going to show you a little bit about how you can find some of those items. It's new that we're putting things up online. And I think that's about it. We also have some wonderful programming, and I did bring some brochures in the back so you can see what our programs are throughout the entire library. Okay, so this is sort of a fisheye view of the Saratoga Room. It was me being artsy one day. This is the library homepage. Probably 3/4 of what is in the Saratoga Room has been cataloged, and you can find it looking in our general catalog. And the search box is kind of weird, but it's right up here in this corner. And you could put in, these aren't live, these are just screenshots, so I can't actually do it. But you could put whatever your search is, a subject term, a person, a place. And if we have something, it will probably show up in the catalog, and you'll be able to see that it's in the Saratoga Room and come in and look at it. If not, connect directly through that record, and I'll show you that in a sec. We also have, this is all going to change within the next, of course, within the next, hopefully, within a very short period of time, we're going to be redoing our website, so it may not look like this, in a few months when you came in and looked. Right here is, Jamie, can we make that bigger? Where's that? There we go. Thought it looked a little small. Okay, so right here, we'll go back that one. Right here is a little tab which will take you to our local history website. Again, with the caveat that this is probably going to be changing in the relatively near time. You can also see we have whatever's going, we highlight whatever the program is, and there's a number of programs here on the side as well. This is the current local history website. It's kind of dry, in my opinion, but you'll find our hours on there. You'll also find our collections along the side here. And all of these are hot linked. It will take you into another page. And it describes some of what our holdings are. We have a variety of databases that have been built, almost hand-built over the years. If you ever were wondering about fires in Saratoga, we have a whole database about fires. Dates, places, whether anybody was injured. We have another one that is nicknames. All the old-fashioned nicknames that people had in the old neighborhoods back in the 20s and 30s and 40s. We have a whole database there. We also have a database on what we have on the waters in our collection. It's not available to the public, but it's something that we have as a tool that we can use to help find that kind of information for you. A lot of what we've been doing and focusing on is getting as much as we can out and online. And we've been using several websites that we have access to through primarily the Capital District Library Council, which is in New York. There are various regional offices in New York, and that's ours. And one of the things that they are doing is something called New York Heritage Digital Collections. And we have put over 600 images up on New York Heritage. These are all searchable. You can put in Saratoga, you can put in High Rock, and you'll get a number of images. Most of the images are from our Jokey collection, Robert Jokey collection, the stereo views. I think I put in over 500 of those. You can search, I'll find my little goober here. You can search, you can browse it, you can search by facility. And again, these aren't live screen, these are screenshots, so I can't actually do it. We've also been putting in to something called the Empire Archival Discovery Cooperative. As we've been working through our manuscript collections, those are our private papers. They range from the Sophie Goldstein jewelry collection, it's a mouthful, in which we have all of the tapes that Sophie had done with the Jewish residents back in the 70s and 80s, and then we have a lot of the paperwork that went with it, images. We had a second collection recently from Saratoga on their veterans program, and just tons of stuff. I have a whole bunch that we purchased from Mitty Bolster's collection that's not quite ready for prime time yet, but that collection will be up there. And what we've been able to put up are the finding aids, so that you sitting at home could look at your computer and you want to see whether or not we have any primary documents. Primary documents are things that are done contemporary to the time period. Secondary are things that you write about. If you wrote a novel about something, that's a secondary resource. But you can see where our primary resources are by looking in our catalog, for one, and you see where it says finding aid available. That is actually a hot link. And where it takes you to is this Empire Archival Discovery Cooperative, which will list, and again, it's not live, so it's hard, but it will list all of the information that's in the finding aid, the name of it, the repository. There's an abstract about it, so you can read a little bit that will tell you what it is you're looking at. There's administrative information. there's a components list that is all of the folder at the folder level. So you can see what the names are of all the folders. And anytime you're in our catalog and you go into more details and you see that finding aid available, you click on it, this is where you're going. We also have begun putting up some digital exhibits. And this is kind of exciting because we're going forward with that. And I'll explain that in a sec. And again, I apologize because they're just screenshots, but I actually have a third up now. But these are featured exhibits, and these are actually done. You will see images, there's sound, there's audio on the Sophie Goldstein one. It will have text that puts what you're looking at in context. And if you click on the image itself or the sound audio itself, it will give you Jim's favorite metadata, which is all of the cataloging that goes behind you. So it would tell you all about that image, what it is you're looking at, who took the picture, what time period it was, how many DPI it's been posted at, all that information that you may need for something to use for your research. And I alluded to this is going to be a up-and-coming place because we're actually working on a project with Mary Ann and Lauren from the county, Ann from Brookside, and Jim from the Saratoga County History Roundtable in the library. And we're putting together what we hope will be some oral histories, starting with stuff that we have in our own collections now, and ultimately expanding to where we're hoping to do a nice oral history project, interviewing folks in Saratoga County. So it's something to look forward to. We're going to be actually hosting it on our website. We have the technology. And the next is Mary Ann. Thank you. Any questions? Anything I can answer? Yes. Anything?
To the microphone. Oh, you want it on here?
That's good. Good evening. Is it on? Okay. Many of you are probably wondering how the Department of Accounts of the City of Saratoga Springs fits into tonight's program. The Commissioner of Accounts wears many hats as specified in our city charter. Section 6.3 says, including but not limited to the duties of city clerk, city assessor, city purchasing agent, the registrar of vital statistics, and the issuer and collector of license fees and rents. Charter also states that the city clerk shall receive, file, index, and archive as custodian of records of all city documents and other instruments required by law to be filed and maintained by the city. On July 18, 1988, the City Council appointed the Commissioner of Accounts to serve as the city's records management officer, yet another hat. Records created during the course of business for any government pose a tremendous challenge, primarily because of mandates imposed upon us as a local government by our state government. Since I cannot say it better, I'm going to read from the New York State Local Government Records Law, Article 57-A, Arts and Cultural Affairs Law, Section 57.3. Unfortunately, no records were lost in the catastrophe. In some aspects, particularly in regards to records housed in the City Hall Annex, that's the side over by Maple Ave, that was actually added later when after the building was built. Right. In that aspect, there was a lot of records that were loose there, but there was no water damage, so we got very fortunate on that. But in the other aspect, the records housed in the city clerk vault, we were well prepared, especially regarding we have all the long-term documents there. All the ones that are approved at the city council table are housed in our vault, and that vault is a watertight 4-level cylinder with a wrought iron spiral staircase. Runs from top to bottom, comes from the bottom level of City Hall right up through halfway through story. So like 2 or 3 of the levels are actually halfway through the building. So the main floor is access off the city clerk, and you go down 2 levels and you can go up 1. So it's pretty interesting, and nobody knows it's there except for the people that work there. It's watertight. It's equipped with a fire suppression unit that's funded by a grant from the New York State Archives. But the challenge and the concern resulting from the debacle did not involve preservation. It's centered upon access. For the most part, we are able to continue to serve the public well because many of the most requested records stored in the city clerk vault are retrievable electronically. For example, all the city's vital records, including birth, death, marriage, and genealogy records, were microfilmed and they were scanned, the newer ones have been digitized into the city's business automation system. So the Vital Records Registrar, when you go in to ask for a copy of your death certificate or a birth certificate or genealogy record, they can get it for you on their computer in a matter of minutes. And the computer that they have is standalone, it's very secure, and everything is backed up. And it's backed up nightly. All city council minutes from 1915 forward, land use board minutes, including design review commission, the planning board, the zoning board of appeals, the urban renewal, from their inception, have been scanned into the city's electronic document management system, Laserfiche, and each of those documents are text searchable. Contracts from 2009 forward are scanned and easily accessed by city employees and officials. There's a lot of documents that we don't currently have access to physically, but because we have all the board council minutes and scanned into our text searchable electronic document management system, we can get the discussions and the decisions regarding that document. So a lot of times we can give you the background of what you're looking for, and we can still give you information you search. So all is not totally lost. And all that stuff, and the Laserfiche, and the public drive and everything is also available on Mary Ann's research computer. We had everything cloned onto there, so we can't do vital records because of state law, but we can give you the minutes, and we have tax rolls and assessment rolls and so forth. Now, the lightning strike was a challenge to the city departments that have a strong dependency on paper, including the building department, planning, zoning, and utilities. This was a wake-up call. And our city council heard it loud and clear. What if these one-of-a-kind documents had been severely damaged or totally destroyed? Now, through the years, there was a lot of effort that had been put into microfilming and scanning paper records and spooling born digital records instead of printing them out. But there is still way too much reliance on paper and far too many documents that are not backed up. So if they were destroyed, that information contained within them is lost. This year, a large sum of money has been set aside in the city's capital budget plan to digitize voluminous record series, specifically building permit files, related maps and plans, design review and zoning files, payroll and retirement records from 1995 forward. We also have had a lot of records microfilmed over the years, but not having access to our microfilm reader printer, because it was left in City Hall storage, made us realize that we should include the scanning of our microfilm in this major digitization plan. So that means that you can, the microfilm still functions as your main copy, your primary copy, but the digital records are going to be the work copy. People will have access to them. And it makes it a lot easier. Another part of the plan is to apply for funding at every opportunity. We just received notice from the New York State Archives that our application for money to scan inactive planning board case files has been fully funded in the amount of $74,875. That's out of a possible $75,000, which is the ceiling on that grant. Regarding tax rolls, I want to publicly thank our county supervisor, Tara Gaston, for reaching out to the county real property tax office.
Okay, so I just have to move forward. Good evening, I'm Mary Ann Fitzgerald, Saratoga Springs City Historian. There's my contact information. I also have some handouts that I understand there's a table back there that I can put those on for you later, which will have all that information and some of the information that we will cover tonight. Okay. Oh, I just wanted to say, Nancy and I both work for the city of Saratoga Springs. And as you know, we have a mayor, and we have finance and accounts and public safety and DPW. Nancy is, as she said, under the accounts department. My position is under the mayor's department. And Nancy and I work very closely together because in my office at 297 Broadway is a vault, and it is full of city documents. And because of Nancy, we've gotten grants to care for, maintain, and organize those documents. Now, the City Archives of Saratoga Springs was established in 1978 when Beatrice Sweeney was our city historian. I'm sure some of you would remember her. And she is living in Connecticut, and she's over 100 years old. And it was through a grant from the National Historic Publications and Records Committee. It was the first archives to be established in New York State, apart from New York City, which followed state retention schedules and guidelines, which is very important. Sounds hard and like a lot of work, but it keeps everything orderly and easy to find when you do that. The holdings in these archives date back to the incorporation of the town of Saratoga Springs in 1819 and the village of Saratoga Springs that was incorporated within the town in 1826. And at this point, I just want to say that before 1819, we were a part of the town of Saratoga, which still exists. So when people are doing research, a lot of times when they contact me, they really need to contact Pat Peck, who is here, one of the historians from the town of Saratoga. And we separated from them in 1819. Now, the records in the city vault, of course, every one of them is a primary record. And they are divided in the groupings that follow the evolution of our government here in Saratoga Springs. As you can see, the town records run from 1819 through 1915. Then the village came in 1826 to 1917, so there were two forms of record keeping during that period. Then when we incorporated as a city in 1915, we moved forward with that right to the present. Other primary documents are from the Board of Education, and we have maps in the map case. The Board of Education has the most interesting document. It is a logbook, and it has Gideon Putnam's name and his signature. And so therefore, our records that are non-governmental, such as that one, that goes back to before he died in 1812, when he and his friends were putting together a school, and they were donating money for that school to be built. Now, those records are all in the vault. And then outside of the vault, we have non-governmental records, a lot of business records, organization records, and this whole situation was put together back in 2016 when Nancy Wagner wrote and was awarded an amazing grant that allowed us to hire an archivist, and we hired Field Horn to help reorganize and maintain the documents. And then we also were able to have Lori Wies catalog some of our documents, and some of that information is put on the city computer. Now, one of the documents that came out of this, Nancy wrote this policy. This is several pages long, so I just took a shot of one page, and it gives the mission of the City of Saratoga Springs Historians Archive. And the mission of the Saratoga Springs City Archives is to identify, collect, preserve, and ensure long-term public access to records, papers, and information that document the history, evolution, and progress of the government and community of Saratoga Springs, New York, with the intent to chronicle and convey the knowledge of its culturally rich and diverse background. So then there's the policy. All of that is available online to read, or you could come to my office and read it. And then when people come in to do research, we have a research registration, and this is all still part of the documents that Nancy wrote and had them passed by City Council. So City Council voted them in, so they're now official. And this is a document that people read, and then they fill this out and sign it for doing their research. Now, when you get a handout, it's going to tell you, here's a screenshot of the City of Saratoga Springs website, which is www.saratoga-springs.org. And when you go to that web page, you can click on Community, and it will open this up. And here you see on the left, you see History. And then in the column with the other links, you will have the Guide to the Archives. That guide is about 102 pages, and it is an outline with an index of every document in the city vault. Thank you, Nancy Wagner, and Fields, and Lori. So that is available online. I brought a paper copy that I can put back there if people want to look at it, as long as you don't take it with you, because now that we try not to print so much paper, we try to get people to use things online if they can. Or they can go to the library and use a public computer to read it. But you're always welcome to come and read mine. Under that, there are the historic districts. That will open up so you can see all of those for the city. And there's a link to the Saratoga Springs History Museum in Jamie. And the Saratoga Springs history link will open up to some abstracts that Lori put together to put on the city website, and people can click on those to get more information. And then there's a link to the archives policy. So that is what is available in the Saratoga Springs City Historian's Office. On the second floor, we have the secondary, or the community files, we call them, and we also have records, photographs. We have copies of house histories from Samantha's Saratoga Springs Preservation Foundation. So if you need anything, email or call to make an appointment, because my position is part-time, and we don't want you to come all the way into town unless you know I'm going to be there. But if you're out for a walk and I'm in, please come in. Are there any questions?
I'm taller. Actually, I think I'm just going to do this. I might be better at this. I'm Samantha Bosshart, the Executive Director of the Saratoga Springs Preservation Foundation. Our mission, we were founded in 1977. We were an outgrowth of the Community Plan for Action to oversee what was a grant program to rehabilitate buildings downtown. including, like, here's a before and after picture to give you a sense, but we ended up having an involvement with 25 different buildings downtown. But our mission is to preserve and enhance the architectural and cultural and landscaped heritage of Saratoga Springs. So I know this is mainly about collections, but we do that through just a couple of different things: advocacy, restoration. We were involved in partnership with the city of Saratoga Springs with the restoration of the Spirit of Life that was completed in 2015. We do advocacy with the Saratoga Racecourse, as well as we do educational programs. So just this last Sunday in the pouring rain, I had 10 people that went on my walking tour of North Broadway every Sunday, and Charlie and Dave will be doing Congress Park for us this coming Sunday at 10:30, but every Sunday through Labor Day we have a different tour to learn about different areas of Saratoga Springs, including Green Ridge Cemetery, the West Side, downtown, a range of tours. So we actually have a brochure back there, so if you want to learn more about the history of Saratoga that way, you can. Then what I'm here to talk about is that we, as part of what we do in partnership with the city, is we have property files. We have approximately over 1,200 property files. So if you're interested in an address, we may or may not have a lot of information on it. It is truly just sort of hit or miss. Most of the time, if the building is located in a historic district, we will have a survey form, which is a very basic form that says when a building was built, what style it is, if it had an accessory building, a picture. There may be some historic maps involved. There may be some city directory research. Some files have more than others. We often get calls from somebody who says, I want to know where my relative lived. And I'm like, well, you need to go to the Saratoga Springs Public Library and go look at the city directories so you can get an address. And then if you get an address, then we can see if we have any important information that would be relevant to what you're researching. So when you think about us, you need to think about a property address. And I guess if the only other thing we also do, and these are the property files that really have lots of information, are the ones that are done through our house history and plaque program. We have an extraordinary volunteer, Joan Walter, who has done over 250 house histories. It's a paid program. She works on average 20 to 30 hours on each building history. She gives a written narrative, full deed chain, city directory research, maps, census data, find a grave. She does an extensive amount of research and she puts it all together, and then for an additional fee you can have the lovely plaque. We only focus on buildings within the city of Saratoga Springs. That is our mission. So unfortunately I do not do plaques for Boston Spa or Schuylerville, although maybe one day our mission will expand, but first my staff would need to expand because we're a staff of 2 full-time. The other things that I guess I wanted to share, because a lot of people don't know that we're a resource for this, but may not be as relevant, is that we are a resource that if you own a historic building in Saratoga Springs and you're considering undertaking a project and you want to know more about whether or not your building needs to go through a review process that goes through the city, we're happy to try and give you that guidance. And assist you with that with your project and how to move that forward. On our website, which is, I will have it up here in a second, we share, you can sign up to have a preservation consultation. Like I said, we are only a staff of 2, so we're sort of like Mary Ann, there's often times where we both can't be at the office at the same time, so we always encourage people to call before you come in, but we're always willing to share what we have in our property files. Our house histories that have been done are also, there's a copy also at the Saratoga Springs Public Library. So Joan has been very diligent about sharing her research. And that is my short but sweet bit of information.
All right, so I'm here tonight from Brookside Museum, the home of the Saratoga County Historical Society. My name is Ann Clothier, and I work there as the Director of Education. I've been there for 8 years now, and I enjoy working there and getting to do quite the variety of different things. Our director, Michelle Arthur, sends her regards, but this evening was the monthly board meeting, so she needs to be there for that, so I have come instead. So we are located in this building, right in downtown Boston Spa, right at the other end of Front Street, opposite end from the post office and the Whistling Kettle. I found that that's the key landmark to use when discussing with anyone about where we are located. So if they can find the Whistling Kettle on Front Street, they can figure out how to get to us. So. Now, our collection includes well over 26,000 artifacts, including photographs, objects, documents, and books. We also do a lot of education programs, and certainly that's my area of focus. And we do a program called Sheep to Shawl, which just celebrated its 40th birthday this year. And so that program is now getting into second generation visitors. We're having parents and teachers come in recent years who came to the program when they were little kids. So that's an exciting thing to see, that multi-generational aspect. We also do programs for adults as well. We do exhibits. We actually are just taking down our World War I and 1918 influenza epidemic exhibit, and we are preparing to put up our next exhibit, which, prepare yourself, chickens. So this exhibit is odd as it sounds, and I will admit, I'm with you, I get it, but once you start digging into this topic, and from all sorts of different angles, but there's so many different directions you can go with this. The economics alone are fascinating, because if you think about the number of farmers in Saratoga County who were raising chickens and selling eggs, and all of the hotels in Boston Spa and Saratoga Springs that were rapidly buying as many fryers and as many dozen eggs as they could get their hands on in the summer season. That really adds a whole different economic perspective to this. Beyond the idea of the butter and egg money for the typical farm wife back in the 19th century, to be able to have some extra money on hand. And then also there's the science aspects, the social aspects, the county fair, 4-H, and I can go on and on. But this is not about that program. But I encourage you to come and visit our chickens exhibit, which opens on July 5th. And so we'll be open for the rest of the summer. Now, we also have lots of research opportunities available at the museum as well. The Irena Wooten Research Room, which is also home of the Heritage Hunters Research Library, that is there and available during all our regular open hours. And Thursdays are a lovely time to visit, because that's when you'll find a lot of our volunteers there, and including, as I knock things over while I try to point to people, Pat Peck. And so there's a lot of volunteers there that can help to find all sorts of genealogy information. We've got extensive surname files, local directories, bound genealogies, all sorts of different resources there. And it is a great place to visit if you're doing really any form of research. But we do see a lot of people working on their family trees. Again, as I mentioned with the programming we do, much of the programming we do is based on the idea of our collections, the items that we have housed at the museum. And our Native New York program focuses on local Native American history. And also our Sheep to Shawl program that I mentioned, that really is encouraging young students to consider the agricultural history of this area, something that's often rapidly forgotten. But the fact that kids get to come and meet a sheep and pet a sheep, that does create quite a memory. Now, our collections are very extensive and quite varied. As I mentioned, we have lots of different objects, books, photographs, and archives. And we have an extensive textile collection, which, as you can see, I'm very happy about. And I love the quilts and the clothing that we have in our collection. Photograph collection is also extensive, in particular the work of Jesse Sumner Woolley, and here's some of his work here. He was a Ballston Spa area photographer, and his history is quite fascinating, but again, I have to keep myself on track and keep going with the presentation, but he is, again, a wonderful person to research and see all of his extensive work. We also have the Taylor collection of papers relating to Judge Taylor and his extended family. We actually received a grant a few years ago to work on that, and there is a very extensive finding aid for that as well. But that includes lots of early paper and early accounts from generally the Ballston, Charlton area. Now, if you would like to explore the collection, we do have our online collections database, which can be accessed from our regular website, brooksidemuseum.org. And if you click on the resources tab right there, then you can go and click right down here, and it's a little bit fuzzy to see, brookside.pastperfectonline.com to browse the collections. And once you get there, you can read through some of the information and descriptions of the different searches. And if you hit keyword search, you can enter your search criteria and be creative and search anything that you are looking into. I also encourage you to be creative with your spelling, because sometimes things were entered in interesting ways. It also depends on what intern, what volunteer, what staff person happened to be doing it at any given time. And from my own experience, trying to search for daguerreotypes in the collection is an adventure in itself, because the spelling of that apparently had lots of variations. And so you can also search in a more advanced way using some of the metadata here, and search all of these different categories as well. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we have an extensive collection of Jesse Woolley, and I wanted to show that if you search his name, you get 4,811 results. So that's when you need to start narrowing things down through that advanced search feature. And so if we search for the Canfield Casino, where we are right now, and we can search for that, and we can bring up a variety of different photographs and other items related to this topic. And by clicking on that image there, you can get a larger image. All of the images that are on our online collections database, they are watermarked. If you are ever interested in obtaining a watermark-free image for a publication or things like that, you can contact our collections department to discuss that procedure and process and how exactly that works. But we do have, again, watermark-free images available. Now, when it comes to collections, the building itself that we are in is part of the collection itself. And this building was built in 1792 as a hotel for people coming to Ballston Spa to take the waters. And it's had quite an extensive history over the years. It also has required quite a bit of work. And when the building was acquired around 1971, a lot of work was needed to stabilize the structure and get it ready for the planned purpose as a history center, as a museum, as a research center. And that's a process that continues on through today. One thing I want to mention is we have the Saratoga County History Roundtable, and Jim Richmond is here tonight, and he's been the one that has really been spearheading that effort, and it is a wonderful sort of grassroots opportunity to really bring history buffs together to share research, to learn, and also to come together. It's been a great opportunity for gathering more volunteers for Brookside and also other local organizations as well, and bringing attention to a lot of this great local history that we have around here. And there are some flyers and information about the Saratoga County History Roundtable on the table back there. But I'd encourage anyone here to join us. There's a website, again, it's listed on those papers back there, to find out about our upcoming meetings. And it's free, open to the public. You're encouraged to join us, and we would love to see you. And one other thing I want to mention that there also is a flyer back there for, in case you have any young historians in your life, we have our Brookside Digs Archaeology Experience coming up August 26th through.
All right, thank you, Jamie. I am Lauren Roberts. I'm the Saratoga County historian. My collection lives in Building 1 in the county complex down in Ballston Spa. So I'm in the same building as the county clerk, the DMV. That's where I am. I'm in the lower level. They've changed the building around with security, so now you have to come in from the McMaster Street side. A lot of people try to park in DMV and come in. You can't come in that way anymore, so just as a point of clarification, come in by the clerk's office, and then you can get access. My hours are Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m., but as many people have said, I am a staff of one, and I am not always there. I'm out with meetings, presentations, so I do require appointments if you want to come in and do research. If you're already in the county building, standing there getting your car registered, and you think, wow, maybe I'll go check out the county historian, feel free to stop by if my door's open. But if you're coming from a distance or you want to make an appointment because you have a specific subject, it would be nice if you could call or email first. So I would say the most common research topic for people who come into my office or send me emails is genealogy. We have, these are kind of the most used collections we have. The Henri Ricci collection is a pretty amazing collection. Henri Ricci was a Charlton historian, and I guess he worked for GE. I'm not sure how much work they got out of him because this guy must have spent his entire life collecting all of this information. He took records from census, assessors, church records, school districts, and compiled them all. So if you're looking for a specific surname, you would go in and all of the surnames from, let's say it's Richmond, then you would go in and look through all of the different given names, and it would tell you whatever the reference is. We don't always have the reference, but we can usually figure out what it is. He uses some kind of cryptic abbreviations to fit in the little boxes, and we've mostly cracked those codes. There are a couple that we still are iffy about, but we can usually figure out what he's talking about or whatever kind of reference it may be pointing to. That's a closed collection. We don't add any information to that. Our surname files and published genealogies, those are open collections. So if you have a ton of information about a family in Schuylerville and you want to donate, add that to the collection. That's where we would put it. I get about between 400 and 600 inquiries a year and by email, and many of those are family history questions. And every inquiry that we research, I have volunteers that help me, and every inquiry we research, we have the question and our answer, and we file those in our surname files so that if anyone else comes in and wants to look at those, we have those on file too. Some vital records. I always cringe when I put this up here. What the county does not have are vital records. A lot of people call me weekly. I need this marriage certificate. I'm looking for a birth record from 1792. Sorry, New York State did not collect birth records in 1792. We have some vital records. There was a short period of time when the county was required by the state to keep marriage records. That's from about 1910-ish to 1930-ish. That's it. That's what we collect. That's what we have in our collections. I'll most likely
send you to the clerk because the municipality in which the event occurred is where the vital record is. It's also at the Department of Health in New York State. So other than those short period of time when we have marriage records, I don't have vital records. You have to go to the municipality, the clerk of the municipality, or Department of Health. There are a few communities in our county that have published their historic vital records. Now, this wouldn't be the actual certificate. This is a listing of the name and the dates. We do have those that are published. I know just off the top of my head, Town of Providence, Clifton Park, Northumberland, Saratoga and Schuylerville, Boston. I'm not sure about that one. But anyway, there are select communities that have published, and we have copies of those. But again, it's not going to be the full certificate. It's just the dates and the names. We do have several historic maps. We have, of course, the earliest we have that covers the entire county for land ownership is going to be the 1856 Samuel Guile map. And then we also have this 66 beers. We have the 1890 Farmers Atlas, which also shows those are farmers, land-owning farmers in the county. Those can be helpful. Local history publications, if John Shearer is the town of Clifton Park historian, if he wrote a book about Clifton Park, we've got those on our shelves. Cemetery listings, we have the ones done from Dave Bixby in the 1990s. He did not do the entire county, but he did a really big section of the county. We also have the Durkee Cemetery census that was done in the 1870s. He also covered a large majority of the county. So we have several cemetery listings. Historic photos, we do have a few hundred historic photos, but I would say that Brookside is probably your best bet for photos, countywide. They have a better collection than we do, and theirs is online. So check there first, and then if you don't have one, you can ask me. Miscellaneous collections, our subject files have things like transportation, railroads, women's suffrage, those kinds of things that don't really have the border of a municipality but are county-wide. We have, I was just looking the other day we have a ghost file. And we have 3 articles related to the devil in Saratoga County. Interesting. And we also have like weather. We have disasters. So articles on the tornado in Mechanicville, some information on flooding, those kinds of things that they don't fit into always just one town that was affected. We have the Board of Supervisors proceedings books. Those tell you the yearly what kind of business the county was conducting. They're very interesting. We have the earliest ones from 1791 to 1802. Then there's a giant gap until after the Civil War. And then we have most of them going forward from the 1870s until present. And many of those are keyword searchable. We use Laserfiche, which the city also uses, so I can type in a name and see if it ever appeared in the Board of Supervisors proceedings. The Cornelius Durkee scrapbooks, that's mostly City of Saratoga Springs based. He collected a lot of things out of the papers, birth, marriage, and death information. And we have our honored deceased veteran files. The county honors a different deceased veteran every month. It started in 1999. I think we've honored over 400, and we have individual veterans files and their stories about their service in whatever time period it was. I get a lot of questions about information on county institutions. These are by far the 2 most popular. We have the county poorhouse or almshouse, which was started in the 1820s and was there until the 1960s. This location would be where the jail is now, the animal shelter. That was a huge farm. It was where the poorhouse was. That picture, the postcard up here, was taken in the early 1900s. That's our second poorhouse. We had an original frame, and this one was built in the 1870s. And then this little building right here, this was built in 1903. It's called the Carpentier Infirmary. A lot of people confuse the Carpentier Infirmary with this building here, which is the Homestead Sanatorium. Mr. Carpentier gave the county
money for both of those buildings, but this one was built kind of as a nursing home. It was built for the sick. This one was built for tuberculosis. So the dates for the Carpentier Infirmary, 1903 to 1961-62, and then the Homestead Sanatorium was a TB hospital from 1913 it was built, and then it closed as the TB hospital in 1961. It reopened the following year as the county nursing home, and it was a nursing home from 61 to 72 when they built Maplewood, which is in Ballston Spa, and then the patients were transferred there. Unfortunately, we don't have all of the records of our poorhouse. We have one book, and this book was rescued off eBay in the 1990s, early 2000s. So this book goes from 1895 to that's incorrect, to 1938, actually. It's the only book in our possession right now. If you know of any others that are out there, give me a call. I will be happy to talk to you. I'd love to take them back. These kinds of records show who was admitted to the poorhouse, what their nationality was, why they were admitted, and then when they were discharged. We also have a book about where the county sent its underage wards. The children were sent to different asylums. So in the beginning, in the early 1800s, the children were kept at the poorhouse, and then the state passed a law where children over a certain age couldn't be kept in the poorhouse in the same, everybody was kept together. So we have from I think this is starts in 1890 and goes up to about 1915. These are all of the different asylums, institutions that we were sending our children to from around the county. So this, you'll see here, there's 2 local institutions we were sending them to. This is Saratoga Hospital, so if it was necessary for one of the children to go to the hospital, there's a record of who was going there. This is Saratoga Home for Children. It became known as the Holly Home. Many of you might recognize that name. So we did send, it was a much smaller orphanage than, let's say, Fairview or the Troy. We sent a lot of people to the Troy Home for Boys and Girls. And there are some specific colonies too. The Craig colony was for people with epilepsy. So there are specific institutions that were for people that needed different kinds of care. Some other interesting record collections that we have. Inactive Records. This is a kind of series that usually you would come to the county clerk, you would hand over your, let's say, deed that you wanted recorded. The clerks there would record the deed, and then you or your lawyer would come back and pick that deed up. These inactive records are records that nobody ever picked up. They never came back. It's a mixed bag. We do have an index for them. They have lots of different information. So they can be very interesting. Tavern license applications, that's a precursor to the liquor license. The county used to be in charge of that before the state took over, so you can look up different tavern license applications, and basically on them, I think I have an example of one later, but your friends would sign their name and say, yeah, he's a good guy, he should be able to have a tavern. So that's kind of how that went. Safekeeping papers, basically you could record something that you thought was important at the county clerk's office. I think that went on up until maybe like 1912. Also a mixed bag, you never know what you're going to find in there. We always say, when we're looking for something, it's like looking for a needle in a haystack. We have a haystack full of needles. We don't always know what's going to be in there, but they're really interesting to look at. We have Prohibition-era alcohol permits. You had to have a permit if you were a druggist at a pharmacy and you wanted to sell medicine that had alcohol in it. We have those. Insurance agency, so that you knew that whoever was selling you insurance wasn't just a fly-by-night kind of guy that was just going to take your money. So these people they had authenticity certificates. And then personal papers, we have lots of different collections. One that stands out is the LaRue collection. It was a family in Charlton who came in the 1770s from New Jersey. This collection was donated in 2011. There's 600 documents starting, the earliest ones from the 1750s, Judge Joseph LaRue was the first justice of the peace of the town of Charlton, which was created in 1792. And then it's his original docket for the first 10 years of his judgeship. Lots of early information about what life was like in and around Charlton and Ballston at the close of the 18th century. So we have lots of those small collections, all different people. This is an example of an inactive record. This is the petition that they signed to get the name of the Grand Union Hotel. They were actually writing to the Secretary of State so that they could license that name, that this was going to be the only Grand Union Hotel in New York State. So that's part of the inactive records. They never came to pick it back up. Here's an example for tavern license applications. I think these are both in Saratoga Springs. The Phoenix Hotel and the Commercial Hotel, is that right? Okay, so these are all their buddies that are signing saying, well, I would really like to be able to buy some beer in these places. So if you could give my friends an application, that would be great. So, not lots of information, but it does have a date. It does have the name of the hotel. And if you can decipher those signatures, then you can find out, who was in the area at the time. I think that's it. This is the prohibition permit for Menges and Curtis down here on Broadway, and the Liggett Company, which I think is also in Saratoga. So, just examples of the kinds of lesser known record series that we have at the county. Any questions? Okay, thank you.
About this place that you're in here and what we do. So we're the Saratoga Springs History Museum, and I put our mission statement up here, but it basically says the mission of the Historical Society is to foster public education and chronicle the history of the city. We collect, preserve, exhibit, and display items that are pertaining to the history of the city of Saratoga Springs, and to educate about the city. So that's our primary mission from the start. We were founded in 1883, and we're probably one of the oldest historical societies and museums in upstate New York, definitely the oldest one in this general area. So when we were founded, we were the Historical Society of Saratoga, including the Upper Hudson, Lake George, and Lake Champlain region. So we collected everything, and today our collections kind of reflect that. So we have a very eclectic grouping of objects, artifacts, even some of our papers. Through the years, our mission has changed and become more focused, so that now we strictly collect objects, items, papers, and photographs that pertain to the history of the city of Saratoga Springs. And that's kind of what I'm going to focus on now, is what we do at the museum when it comes to our collecting mission. So in our collections here, we've got somewhere, I always say around 15,000, we're probably upwards of 16 to 17,000 at this point, objects that relate to the history of the city of Saratoga. So I just took a couple shots here just to try to describe the variance in it. If you go into the high stakes gambling room, you see portraiture. We have somewhere around 30 to 40 portraits of Saratoga Springs residents. Our largest collection is by a painter named Nelson Cook. He painted in Saratoga in the late 19th century, and probably one of the best artists in our area at that time. We have items that relate to the gambling industry in Saratoga Springs, because we're in the Canfield Casino, and gambling played such a huge part in our city's history. Roulette wheel here from Riley's Lake House, which was one of the gambling places. Furnishings from the Canfield Casino. I know the furniture that's in here is not part of our collection, but we still try to protect it, since this is all original furniture relating back to the Canfield days. We have numerous sculptures in the museum, and whether they were made in Saratoga Springs, which they probably were not, they were owned by Saratoga Springs families. So that's why we can keep them in our collections. We also have a costume collection. 99.999% of our collection is female, or women's clothing. So I decided I was going to put out a military jacket of a uniform. And it's neat though, because that uniform, it goes back to the year 1907, but it was worn by one of the founding members of our historical society back in the 1880s.